For more analysis on this, we are joined by Louise Naude. She is the Senior Manager Climate Change Portfolio at Worldwide Fund. She joins us now to talk about COP27 and some of what's going to come out of there. A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for speaking to us, Ms. Naude. I wonder if you've had a chance to listen to and actually read the outcomes of the Presidential Committee on Climate Change to look at what the goals are for South Africa ahead of the COP27 summit. So particularly the priority investment and financing interventions towards a just energy transition investment plan. We've just mentioned some of it. Are we headed in the right direction?
So I am also, besides my job at WWF, I'm one of the presidential climate commissioners.
Okay.
So I was just in the very briefing
Awesome.
that the president and Mr. Menele gave the commissioners about the Just Energy Transition Partnership Investment Plan. And this is now available on the presidency's website. So I would encourage everyone to go and have a look and see for yourself what is proposed in there. Basically, what this investment plan is that, as you know very well, at COP26, the UNFCCC 26th Conference of the Parties, 5 governments said that they would give money to South Africa for our Just Energy Transition Plan. And the South African government said, okay, but, we must determine what the content of such a plan is. Mm-hmm. And the government has identified 3 key focus areas for the next 5 years, being the electricity system, the electric vehicles, and green hydrogen, because we want to position the country as, a leading exporter and user of green hydrogen also within the country. So that is sort of positioning ourselves for the future. The electricity part of it is to move in a managed and responsible manner to renewable energies. And I say managed and responsible because of some of the issues raised in the clip that you just showed. So the job of the commission that I'm part of is to make sure it is a just transition. And it will not be a just transition if it doesn't see to the interests of the workers in the fossil fuel value chains, because it's both our, liquid fuels and our electricity value chains. And if it doesn't see to the interests of communities that are dependent on these value chains, and also the municipalities, where this is the key economic income earner. So, how are we going to ensure that justice? That is to make sure that we create economic diversification. And it's not just an Mpumalanga issue. Sure, our electricity production is in Mpumalanga mainly, and a lot of the coal mines are there. But there's a lot of different municipalities and provinces involved in the energy transition that have to be thought about. And overall, the transition isn't just about energy, but this JETP, as it's called, is only about the energy piece, right? So first of all, we have to make sure we do economic diversification. Secondly, we have to make a plan for the workers that have to transition, whether it be, active labor market policies, things like skills development, social protection for workers who may lose their work as they transition into other work, early retirement for older workers who anyway would soon retire, and support for local communities. So, unless, and the president made this point, unless our transition addresses South Africa's triple challenges of poverty, unemployment, and inequality,
Okay.
then we don't call it a just transition. Then it's just a transition.
Okay, so let's just talk about that. Obviously, consultation with all stakeholders is important. You've mentioned Komatipoort. It's been pointed out that it accounts for a huge amount in terms of gas emissions for the size of plant and where it is, that it's going to result in quite a number of benefits, including the quality of air. But there is going to be a disruption to communities. There's a promise of jobs, but are these seasonal jobs or are they long-term? So talk to us about that, and particularly in terms of the deal that South Africa has made with other countries, which you mentioned as well. I mean, just looking at some of these countries like the UK, we've been recently talking about its energy problems. It's still firing up its coal plants. So Africa as a whole, particularly South Africa, accounts for a minimal amount of the gas emissions. So why are we being paid to decommission coal-fired stations? What we're looking for ideally is an energy mix that will help drive development.
So let's unpick a lot of those key issues that you're raising. So let's firstly just be very clear that climate change itself is going to destroy developmental gains that we have made in this country and hit the poor the hardest. So inaction in the face of climate change, and quite correctly, you have some of those images now, poor people suffer the most when climate impacts hit us, and inaction in the face of climate change is irresponsible. The International Panel on Climate Change, which is the UNFCCC scientific body, has, done deep reviews of the science, and basically it's going to take everybody doing everything possible to keep global warming, at most at 1.5 global average. And you must remember, if the global average is 1.5, South Africa's average temperature is twice that, because we're already in a hotter zone of the world. Okay, so climate change itself is coming, whether we like it or not. It is impacting, and we have to act. And everybody has to do their part, and it's going to take every sector doing everything. Now, secondly, Eskom is not decommissioning power stations that were not already at the end of their lifespan. So the choice is not that we are being forced to decommission power plants that, otherwise we would have kept running and so on. We anyway had planned to decommission them. And now we are saying we replace that electricity with renewable energy. And renewable energy is cheaper. It is quicker than a new coal-fired power plant. It can be put up in a decentralized manner. So there's some areas, where people still don't have grid electricity. I mean, government, I think, has done an excellent job in rolling out the grid to most people, but there are a few areas where it's just very difficult in rural or mountainous areas to actually put the distribution network there. And you can put then a local renewable energy plant, and serve those people. So renewable energy for new build, new supply, is a better option than coal. And then this question of, I think it's a very important point you raise about global dynamics. So at the outset of the UNFCCC, there was a principle adopted called common but differentiated responsibility, which means that we all countries of the world have some responsibility, but that responsibility is different depending on their historical contribution to the problem we sit with. In other words, their historical contribution to emissions. And it is very clear that it is the so-called developed world that has contributed by far the most to the problem that we sit with today, because it's the build-up historically of emissions. It's not yesterday's emissions that, they are adding to that build-up, but it's the build-up over a century or more since industrialization of the emissions that's causing climate change. So they hold the greatest responsibility to firstly cut their own emissions. And secondly, the other geopolitical justice part is that they must support developing countries, emerging economies, and least developed countries to do that in our own country.
Okay.
So it's not that South Africa mustn't do it, but that we must do it. It must be funded by them.
The smartest way of doing it.
That brings us to the JETP. And the problem is that the money they've put on the table is a drop in the ocean. At the commission meeting that we were just in, Mr. Minele presented the JETP investment plan. So what South Africa did said, how much do we need over the next 5 years to transition these 3 sectors, including the justice dimensions of it, okay? And it's over 2023 to 2027, it's 1.5 trillion rand.
Okay.
What have these 5 entities offered us so far? They've offered 128 billion. It's a drop in the ocean.
All right.
So they really must come forward with more money.
I'm really saddened that we have run out of time, because I did want to know what you're hoping to tweak in terms of that broader consultation mandate that's being taken to COP27, and also talk about fiscal realities and, of course, the sectorial shifts that we can and should be making. But such a pity, but I look forward to chatting to you more over the next couple of days and weeks, maybe, as we unpack some of those commitments and look at the different financial plans. Much appreciated. A member of that Presidential Climate Commission, Louise Naude. She is also Senior Manager at Climate Change Portfolio at Worldwide Fund.